Right, well, I was going to be talking today about a specific subject, and that was Angry Joe and the problems he had with creating videos about Nintendo products and specifically trying to get gameplay footage in order to be able to do a review. And he's not the only YouTuber to have problems with this. Anytime any YouTuber who is not on the creators program or is not whitelisted by Nintendo tries to do a review and puts in Nintendo footage, they fall foul of Nintendo, who tries to claim the footage. And other YouTubers who are pretty big have fallen foul of this in the past, and we've had Boogie2988 talk about this, and ReviewTech USA's talked about this, and loads of people who've had problems with Nintendo in the past. And there have been other companies over the years who've caused problems. But most game companies, as Angry Joe himself said in his video about this, have come round to the idea that letting YouTubers, letting reviewers use gameplay footage of a game that they're reviewing is actually good for business because it means that they actually get free marketing. But some hold out. And one of those companies is Konami. Fuck Konami. And one of the others is Nintendo. And it seems to me that Nintendo are holding on to part of the past. But I think this has broader implications. And I think these come to the fore to some extent when you look at what happened with the Jim Sterling debacle last week. And you guys might be thinking, what on earth is he talking about? What has Jim Sterling being attacked by a bunch of idiots who DDoSed his website got to do with Angry Joe and his problems with showing Nintendo footage? Well, I think there is a link, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But what I want to have a look at first is some of the things you have to do in order to get in with Nintendo. And basically what they want is they want family-friendly YouTubers, people like that. And some of the big companies seem to be able to get onto what is known as a whitelist. And Angry Joe goes into some detail about this on his video, so I'm not going to go into it in too much detail here. But basically, there are a group of reviewers, YouTubers, people like that who are whitelisted. And they then will do reviews of Nintendo and they will be able to show footage. So I think there's a slight problem there, in as much as I think there's a conflict of interest. Because no one who's on the whitelist is going to want to be removed from it by annoying Nintendo in some way. That's not to say that anyone on the whitelist is dishonest or that they're deliberately pulling the wool over the eyes of the people who watch their channels or read their websites or whatever. But you have to admit, if a reviewer is getting deferential treatment from a company, it makes it a lot more difficult for them to be open-minded and come out with reviews and opinions that aren't in some way, at least in some small way, tainted. And that's just human nature. You don't have to be dishonest, as I say. It's just that when somebody is friends with you, or you perceive that they're friends with you, or they're doing something for you, they're helping you out, it's much harder to be negative about them. So on the face of it, this is good business practice by Nintendo. But I do think it's anti-consumer, and I don't think it helps us arrive at an idea of whether a product is good or not if the reviews that we're looking at are made by people who have had these inducements. And I have to state this again. I'm not saying people are dishonest. I'm saying that human nature is such that we find it hard to be negative when someone's helping us out. And let's be honest, Nintendo are helping these people out if they're giving them preferential treatment over other reviewers. But then, of course, we've also got the creators program. And in some respects, I think that might even be worse. Because, as Angry Joe himself put it again, this is generating a revenue stream for Nintendo. Because what happens is people sign up to their creators program. And then they can make their videos and they can put up, Nintendo intellectual property on those videos. And then Nintendo take the revenue and then dole them out some money as they see fit. And again, this is going to affect the way those people present their content. Because obviously they're not going to want to fall foul of Nintendo. So you're creating this echo chamber. You're creating this group of people, those on the whitelist and those on the creators program, who are on message in effect. And again, this doesn't mean those people on the creators program are necessarily dishonest. I would suspect that most of the people who go onto the creators program are Nintendo fans, are, really into Nintendo and want to disseminate information about Nintendo and, want to be positive and upbeat and so on and so forth. But what happens if you're on the creators program and Nintendo do something you don't like? Again, there's a conflict of interest there. And I do think this creates a problem, because then you've got the people who are outside of this system. They're outside of the whitelist. They're outside of the creators program. And they have real problems showing any footage. Never mind the fact that that footage is fair use, because they're using the footage to talk about the game and they want to show aspects of the game that they either think are good or bad. For instance, if I was talking about Zelda, I would want to show some footage that showed where you're chasing animals and they just disappear off the screen. And that's a negative about that game. And don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing the game overly. I think it's a good game. But that is one specific area of the game that I would like to be able to show that there's a problem. And there are other things I'd like to show that they're good. Like, for instance, the environment. But if you can't do that, if you can't show that footage, then you're not able to put out a review that is going to be interesting to people, because a lot of people won't watch the review if you can't show footage of that gameplay. And I understand people not wanting to do that. I understand that. That makes sense. But it does create a problem. On the one hand, you've got the people on the whitelist, you've got the people on the creators program who are going to be inclined to be positive. And on the other side, you've got the people like Jim Sterling, Angry Joe, who may well be positive, but they will more likely come out and say negative things because they do not have this conflict of interest, but they do have a problem showing the gameplay. And I actually wanted to test this out myself. So what I did was I made a couple of test files of Nintendo games and I put them up on YouTube. And I think they're 5 minutes long. I actually did one 30 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minutes, and I think that was it. And then I took a screenshot of what happened. Literally, almost immediately, Nintendo were claiming that footage. So it doesn't just happen to the big YouTubers. It's not like they're picking on Jim Sterling or Angry Joe. It's a situation that will occur for me, for you, if you're trying to show footage of Nintendo products and you're trying to do a review of a Nintendo product, you will fall foul of this system. And that creates a problem. And it's a much broader problem than just to do with being able to review a game. I talked about wind tunnels earlier, and you end up in a situation where people in their wind tunnels go and they view the reviews that are positive. So they hear all these positive reviews, and then someone like Jim Sterling comes out with a review that's still fairly positive, but has, sort of negative elements to it, and ends up giving it a 7 out of 10 score, and people go batshit crazy. And he ended up having a DDoS attack against his website. And I did a video about that, and I'll put a link in talking about that specifically. But this is a problem because you end up with this situation where there's a sort of dichotomy where people can't meet in the middle, where you've got people who, on the one hand, are buying wholeheartedly into the Nintendo narrative, while on the other hand, you've got people like me who have reached the point where we no longer trust some of the reviews. And we look at a 10 out of 10 and we go, are they on the whitelist? And we wonder. And that's not good. And I think that Nintendo and other companies as well, I think this is to do with the way marketing occurs these days. I think Nintendo do bear some responsibility here. Because with the whitelisting and with the creators program, they are creating this dichotomy. They're creating this problem. And I think indirectly, some of what we saw happening with Jim Sterling this week is as a result of what's happening with Nintendo's marketing and their approach to disseminating information about their products. They're not allowing fair use. They're stopping fair use. And they're stopping the likes of me and anybody else out there who is a YouTuber, especially us small guys, because Jim Sterling and Angry Joe are much bigger. They can fight their corner to some degree. But if they're having a problem with Nintendo, how do you think I'm going to get on if I try and upload Nintendo footage? Well, as I say, I've got that link up and you can have a look at it and see exactly what happened. They stopped it immediately. And this, as I say, causes problems. I think it's a real issue. And I think moving forward, Nintendo and other companies need to have a look at this. And this is why I'm really pleased with the likes of Phil Spencer, where he kind of diffuses this fanboyism, where when Nintendo do something he likes, he says so. Where Sony do something he likes, he says so. He's about encouraging gamers to enjoy their hobby. And if they enjoy it on Nintendo, or they enjoy it on Sony, or they enjoy it on Microsoft, so much the better. He wants people to buy the Xbox. Of course he does. But he doesn't want the infighting. He's pretty much stated that clearly. And I think it's about time some of the other companies followed suit. And I think Nintendo need to have a major look at their policies. Because when people like Jim Sterling are getting DDoS attacks and death threats and people telling him to go and drink bleach, I think that's a real problem. And I really do think that Nintendo need to take some responsibility here. This is partially their fault. Anyway, I don't know what you guys think about that. That's me ranting on about it. I do think that it's a problem and I do think we need to look into it. And I do think the responsibility lies in part with Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo. And I think Nintendo are one of the worst, if not the worst culprit. But let me know what you think in the comments anyway. And as usual, I'm going to go and grab myself a cup of tea and I'll speak to you in the next one. Bye.